I'm more than happy to present you our next speakers, and I must confess that I have my personal affection to these guys. So they are genius designers, UX prophets in wargaming, our creative director, Constantine Gavrykov, and UX genius and designer, Kamil Krupski. So just some words about them. So Constantine is a crazy player and has more than 10 years of experience in different design agencies, and among his clients were such big guys like Kevin Kline and Tommy Hilfiger and Microsoft and many others. And now he is a father and a head of in-house design agency in wargaming. And guys really do amazing things here. And Kamil, also a great designer, has more than 10 years of experience, and he tries to solve one problem at a time. It's his credo, and believe me, he really does it. So please welcome the guys, and you're welcome.
Oh, cool. The slides are on. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Works? Can you check your mic? Good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Actually, I'm pretty happy to see so many people here. And yeah, at 4C so far, there has been made like a lot of talks, and this is just one of them. What makes AAA game UI? So let me start with some introductions and some weird pictures that we managed to do in NBA 18 Live that just came out. I thought it would be funny, but I don't know. So as Kate said, like, my name is Constantine Gavrykov, and I'm based in Amsterdam, and been with Wargaming for the last 3 years, leading the team of 20 UX and visual designers. Kamil is one of them. He's a senior UX designer from our team in Paris. And one thing besides just professional connection we have in common is crashing games. But often we discuss what really makes players happy and what brings them back to the game every day. But today
we disagree.
Yeah, and we disagree a lot, exactly. And that's why I thought it would be a cool idea for us to make a talk together, to either find some common ground or actually expose the things that are different between us. So today we're going to be talking about the AAA game UI, and a lot of these games, they have done something extremely good, but that's not our purpose. Our purpose was to focus on games despite the platforms and genres, and figure out what do they have actually that unites them all. So this is our personal research and opinion, so don't take it really serious, or you can, but still. We have backed it up with a bit of theory behind, and we hope that you'll find it interesting and can use it in the line of work where you are in. So to help me a bit, guys, I want to ask you a couple of questions, basically, to understand who you are. So please raise your hand as soon as you hear that, okay, it's at least remotely fits the explanation of your title and role. So UX designers and researchers? Oh, not that many as I would expect. Kamil, your hand? No? UI artists or UI designers? No? Okay, cool, guys. Hi there. Game designers? Hi, guys. Yeah, happy to see you all. Developers? Wow. Okay. We'll try to tailor it to be a bit more technical, but I'm not sure. So producers? Any producers? Cool. Hi, guys. And the other, I guess, this is the rest. Cool, guys. Happy to see you all. So let's basically run through some definitions so that we have common understanding. So what is AAA? For the last couple of decades, it was the the informal classification for the games that are developed with really high budgets, and because of that, they have really high risks as well. But if done right, they can hit the bank and really can make quite some money. And of course, because of that, those are like the top-notch experiences, like iconic and everything, legendary. And these experiences are usually done by very talented, seasoned veterans and professionals. So that's why they are AAA. What else do we have here is the user interfaces. So user interfaces sometimes fail us. Can I get help with that, guys? Over there, I can continue, of course, like just portraying the things for you, like without any pictures. But we got some bunch of videos, and it's going to be a bit more complicated for me and Kamil.
It's not blinding. There's no light.
I guess something is wrong with the beamer because, yeah, indeed, it's not really. Sorry for that, guys. So, like, this slide was not exactly kind of like really visual, so I can continue while guys are trying to fix the problem. So, what is user interface? User interface is basically the means between kind of like the user, like in our case, the player, and the way he or she interacts with the system, in our case, the game. And there are a couple of things that are definitive for the user interfaces, and there are like main points, which is like control over what happens in the game. And yeah, it works over here. Sorry, once again. Yeah.
It's not really surprising.
You were expecting it, yeah? I think it happens only with the talks when the majority of the people show up and, yeah, it's like for you to have some fun. Yeah, of course, like after all, we can always like turn this screen back and kind of like around with it, like, but we didn't prepare. Oh yeah, I think we were pretty close. Yeah, here we are. So, cool. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Let's hope it's not going to happen again. So, back to the topic. Like, we were defining what is the user interface, and as I said before, it is the way for the user, and in our case, player, because like we work with the games, is the matter like how he or she interacts with the game, with the, basically kind of like the system. And there are two main points, which are like control and feedback. Control over what's happening in the game, and feedback is about like the progress and actually status about like what's going on in there as well. And immersion we picked up over here as a filter for our research, because like we think that sometimes, or in a majority of the cases, interface is basically kind of like one of the most crucial things that is either standing in the way or trying to at least like not to distract people from you know, like enjoying the game. So what we're gonna do in the next kind of like 15 minutes is we are going to walk you through 4 games, AAA titles, very well known. Hopefully you all played them so you can relate, and we will try to distill 15 features that are, in our opinion, basically definitive for the AAA in general. And we'll start with Injustice 2. So please, Kamil, here you go.
Yeah. So the thing is that nowadays your players are really new to gaming. So they have a specific set of expectations and experiences, and you have to be aware of it. And good genre to look at this is actually fighting games. So they have very well established database, the base of patterns. And whether you are playing Mortal Kombat or Tekken or Guilty Gear, you will see the same, basically the same layout. So health bars are at the top of the screen. There is a timer in the center. Additional special moves counters are probably somewhere in the bottom corners. And there are good reasons for it. So health bars are mirroring the initial position of the players. So one is on the left, one is on the right. And these were players looking at the arcade machine as well.
Like us over here. Imagine that's an arcade machine.
And they are draining towards the center of the screen where the timer is. So all the crucial information at the end of the fight is located in the same place. You can quickly look at it and judge the situation. All the other information is kind of secondary, so it can be in the peripheral vision and it can be located in the bottom corners. And it also has some visual hints, so wherever it's relevant, you will actually see it. But you could kind of switch it. You could put the health bars in the bottom of the screen. It technically would work. The thing is that you are asking your players to look down instead of up, where this is instinctive. So you have to work with the familiarity, how they understand the product. And the second thing it actually achieves is lowering the cognitive load. Because when people are working with something they know and which is familiar, and moreover the user interface is rather simple and clean, it allows them to concentrate on the game more. This is only streamlining whatever is happening. But there is one more thing that Injustice and fighting games do pretty well, and this is focusing on the character. This is understandable because in the fight, this is the main source of feedback. People have to look at the characters and understand where it's possible to make a combo, where they're supposed to block or perform any other actions. But the important thing is also when they are choosing the character and they are building the initial bond with the avatar they will be controlling. So they can understand what to expect. They can build proper expectations by looking at it. If somebody is fast, if somebody is strong, if somebody is just evil. And they can kind of relate to it, create a human connection with the character. And the same thing is reiterated later after the fight. When you actually see a bit of short scene with your character. And for example, Harley, something is blowing up.
Hopefully it's us looking like that at the end of this presentation.
Something is blowing up behind her, and you kind of understand this character a little bit more and build a stronger bond with it. And all the other elements of the user interface are helping on the sides only. It's not the main focus. So let's see. Actually, what we've learned from Injustice is don't reinvent the wheel unless it's crucial. It's sometimes necessary, but rarely. Try to limit cognitive load. Like your game should be fun. It should be challenging, but it shouldn't be a hassle. And try to establish the human bond between the characters the player control and the player itself.
Another hiccup, and again, like, sorry guys, bad. Okay, here we go. So bucketing up basically what we decided to distill from Injustice 2, one of the 4 games. It's 3 features that we think are, again, like making the AAA games UI stand out. It's familiarity and predictability, low cognitive load, and focus on the character. But going further, we would like to look at something completely different, which is the Battlefield 1. And here you see a very controversial point that actually Kamil didn't agree with me would work at all, and I truly believe that's the thing, like seamless UI. So there is a study and a research called A User's Guide to a Brain by Dr. John Ratey, and he talks about the way people learn kind of like physical acts. And during this learning process, they actually use a lot of cognitive, like conscious thinking. So imagine like you learning to ride a bike or even like tying your shoes. At the beginning, it's going to take your time, and you will have to kind of like be thinking about that. So yesterday on some of the presentations was like probably by you, Sean, like you're riding a bike and chewing a gum at the same time. It's supposed to be quite easy, yeah, but only if you know like how to do both things. And as soon as you know them, they become motor memory. And if they are motor memory, you don't need to think about them anymore. So let's take it this perspective in the game UI and basically how you perceive the information there and consume all the stuff that's going on there. So there's a popular belief, at least among the designers, that the future of UI is actually no UI at all. So it should be seamless, like invisible. And I guess it's not gonna happen until we have really kind of like a direct connection between the game and your brain, so you can kind of like communicate the information back to the system and get the response. Otherwise, you would not be able actually, with the level of sophistication that we have in the games right now, to see like how much ammunition they have, who is on your side, who is against you, and basically kind of like use this information for the good. So my point is what Battlefield has done and what DICE has done actually in the Battlefront as well. If you've seen both and compare, like the interfaces look like pretty similar. So they went for actually utility. So they simplified everything, like from colors to fonts to iconography, to make it like really look like a service UI. And by that, crazy I know, but instead of hiding or decorating it, they just like made it so obvious and so familiar and so basic that it actually becomes invisible for the player and makes it possible to be engaged in the game even more. Another thing that is really helpful here is iconography. We are all visual creatures, and games have been always known for actually doing stuff really good, like in terms of visual. And iconography is basically the way to transform complicated and basically usually sophisticated things metaphorically into small and recognizable symbols. So iconography just like really helps you to declutter your interface and to make it understandable. And of course, afterwards, to save some space to get the focus on the character, the stuff that Kamil was talking about. But let's take a look at the landing hub of the Battlefield. Basically, it's another example where they use, like again, like seamless UI, and they use iconography, and they use something that is like approach in design called visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy basically explains like how the elements are arranged around the interface, so to direct the human kind of like perception and the human eye and attract it to some specific like points of interest. So what they do here is some kind of like general menu at the top with sections and subsections. Then they are addressing the newcomers with like really bright and central cards with like tutorials or like quick match or like operations. Then for veterans, they basically have shortcuts over here because they know already what they're looking for, so it's a quick access stuff. For social players over there, they reserved an area where you can see your friends available right now for the game. And for stat checkers, top right with your level, and that's an access point. But to make it all work, they are using the scanning patterns. And since we are kind of like, let's say, at least in the Western society, like used to read left to right, top down, you inevitably gonna end up with one of two patterns. Like this one is called E or F pattern because like it resembles the Latin letter F. So you start like scanning top down, looking for points of interest. As soon as you find one, like you start reading horizontally. This one is actually better for the text-heavy layouts. So I guess they were going for this one, and which is called Z pattern. And it works exactly the same. And again, like because of the reading habit, like from left to right, and you go to the next line, start again. They managed to actually direct the player's eye, like to scan the information in seconds. So I think this is actually a really great result. But besides the graphical user interfaces, and this is again like what we wanted to address here, we need to think about like how the game can interact with you, provide some feedback and immersion through other means. So, Kamil.
And we want to just talk a bit about the part of the UI. Some people don't consider it UI or forgot about it. So we have the problem that our output devices are not perfect, and we cannot provide experiences that happen in the game. So for example, if our screens are not bright enough to blind you like the sun would, and since we cannot actually do this stuff, we can pretend it in the game. So if you look at Battlefield, you have this overlays of blood, camera is starting to shake, it's going black and white, and kind of cheats your brain that something is happening. And the same when grenades are starting to explode and the sounds go really, really quiet, and you hear the ringing in your ears. So your brain is kind of cheated that this actually happens. And it thinks that these experiences are actually real.
So yeah, bucketing up what we got like in Battlefield is seamless UI with the help of iconography, of course, and the seamless, I mean, just like really well organized and depersonalized visual hierarchy, and another means of communicating information and making the experience more immersive, like by simulating real experiences. Let's take a look at the same, let's say, genre, but a completely different installment, which is Destiny 2, that just came out and one of our personal favorites.
Oh.
My personal favorites.
So Destiny stands out from the competition because it has very distinct feeling. And what the team managed to do is create this very consistent style for the game that is happening in the future, but it kind of resides sentimentally in the past. And this has been done with having a lot of inspirations from old cartography or 60s tech manuals, putting them in the really science fiction game. It created very, very specific feel. And moreover, they had to present a lot of different content, especially in the inventory management. And they had to make it really clear. So they based a lot of design decisions on the Swiss design. This can be summarized in cleanliness, readability, and objectivity. And if you look wherever in the Destiny, whether there's inventory screen, whether these are options, or even in game itself, so banners or logos at doors, everything tries to follow exactly the same rules, and this creates very coherent experience. But understanding the limitations and requirements actually led the team to create, to reinvent something, and this was actually a really nice idea. So.
Because the first Destiny, if you remember, it was released for the consoles, so they had to kind of like deal with inventory management, which was like enormous, like in a very like creative, technical way.
Yeah. So usually on the consoles you would use D-pad or analog stick and bumpers, and this works great when you have a limited number of options. It is, however, tiring when the options get dense and there is a lot of information to present. It can be tiring mentally, and actually it can be physically painful. So the team decided to use cursor, and cursor or console is risky because they lack the precision of the mouse. So they had to solve it somehow. What they did is they varied the friction of the movement. So the cursor was slowing down whenever it was close to the actionable items. And this allowed for the feeling of snappy mechanics, to actually helping the players choose whatever they require. And one more thing that Destiny did amazingly well is realize what is very important for players in the game, and that it has to look special. So all the ownable items, like weaponry or armor sets, they're contrasting. So the interface itself is simple, it's rather flat. These items, though, are perfectly modeled 3D renders. And they're always recognizable on icons, and they feel kind of special. And this is very important, especially if the items can be bought or are something that you have to work hard to get. You have to make them really polished and really sexy, really feel better than a standard set of pixels. And if you look at the prospector, for example, it has these wooden elements that are usually feel like something rich. It has golden elements, it has a lot of ornamentation, it's color-coded. So instantly looking at it, you realize that it's something you have to cherish and something you have to desire.
Again, departing from the graphical user interface, I want to highlight here the other approach to making it like the experience more immersive and communicate to you some additional kind of information, which is reliance on physical space. So let's take, for instance, like 2 levels of immersion. The first one is happening by absorbing you into the experience of the game. So for instance, the example with Battlefield and the flashbang and the splashes on your screen when you're dying of blood. And the second one is involvement of the character in the physical space of the game itself. And by that, by involvement of the character, involvement of the player itself. And it is possible, for instance, like in Destiny, because they decided to rely on what you see on the screen. This is like the run through the Traveler, it's called. That's a home base where you come back after the missions, like you go to vendors here, you socialize with different players, and it relies on 3 factors. The first one is the architecture of the space, basically geometrical structure of the space of the Traveler. The second one is the narrative of the space. So it provides you additional cultural and historical kind of like context and social context, like why are they all here, what's going on, like what kind of like part are you playing in that, and all this kind of like stuff. And the third one is the character itself. Of course, like it has to be present, so it works like with a TPS view at least. And by that, you kind of like by the character, you see to have the presence in the space itself. And then whatever happens, it can really kind of like evoke some emotional, like response. And this is a pretty popular kind of like stuff from Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 right now. A lot of people using it like a competition, like to enjoy themselves and be actually more immersed into the world itself. Though they are not relying only on the home base, for instance. So instead of just like having some boring like loading screens, you usually jump into your own very own spaceship and travel to the mission or the crucible event. And then the other guys like from the fire team joining, and even before the event starts, you can already anticipate who they are, what the level they are, and things like that. So Destiny and what we got from it is basically style, consistency, and atmosphere, considering input and relying on like basically the technical limitations and hardware. Sexy and polished look for to satisfy all the collectors, and all of us have a little collector inside, and a lot of games use that, of course. And reliance on physical space. But let's move on, and this is the 4th game we wanted to share with you, which is like Forza Horizon 3, and it's quite different from the installments before, but it has similar kind of like approach to the UI.
Yeah. So what is interesting in Forza is the fact that it has literally hundreds of cars and even more items for customization or tuning. And if you're dealing with such an amount of items, you have to categorize them properly and you have to name them properly. And what I mean by properly is not what seems logical to you or what seems right to you. You actually have to understand how your users work. So you have to ask them, and you have to map all the organization schemes to their mental models. So you have to test, you have to talk with them, and when you actually realize how they search for objects, then you can provide the categorization that will make sense for them. But there is one more thing that Forza does really interestingly, and this is using the contextual hubs. So if you imagine, if you are racing, for example, there's huge chance that you don't need garage options. And the same, if you are in garage, you don't need some racing options. So what Forza team decided to do is create this tailored menus, the hubs of entry points that only provide you with the options that are actually relevant to the current context. So thanks to that, you can quickly jump to different places in the hierarchical structure without navigating through the old menus. And you can just do whatever you have to do and get back.
And since it was crafted in Microsoft Studios, they heavily relied on the design principles of method design, so, which can be kind of like clearly seen and what you see in like Windows 8 and the entire ecosystem there.
But another interesting thing when we talk about contextual menus is contextual interactions itself. And contextual interactions are basically in every modern game. And they allow you to unclutter the user interface and provide users with a lot of options and actually guide them towards things you think they can find interesting. So in Forza, for example, if you are seeing a friend driving around, you can challenge them to the race. And if you think about it, if somebody is not interested in multiplayer experience, the person will never go to the multiplayer menu, will never explore this functionality. However, if you prompt about this functionality whenever it's relevant, the person may at some point decide to try. And actually, the person can like it and explore something more. So this is actually a great tool for trying to push your users towards things they can really enjoy but are not aware of it. And all of this is supported by great typography. And first of all, it focuses, as in most of the modern games, on readability and being really clear. However, it's also very scalable. So Forza team decided to use condensed font, very simple, which first of all looks good because it seems kind of dynamic in the dynamic racing game. However, it's also very good for translating purposes as it takes less space. So, great. And the last thing is they actually put a lot of text in the game world, having it angled at different places in the game world, which not only provides information, but actually allows for having a huge visual impact on the players. So let's sum up. First of all, you need to provide structure that is not only quick to navigate, but actually makes sense to your players. And using contextual interactions can allow you to guide your players toward more meaningful experiences. And proper typography is not only informational and provides the visual impact, but it should be also scalable.
And complementing user experience and things like graphic design methods and approaches like to get a better interface is great, but we could not discount the value of quality sound. And what I want to do next is to share with you a couple of examples from the games that sound plays like two very important roles both like providing you feedback and vital information, and as well creating the atmosphere. So please feel free to shout like if you recognize what this sound is. Like two of them are like from the past and really have I have a personal connection with them, and one is different. Anybody? I'm feeling healthier already just like listening to Half-Life. Exactly. So this is the Half-Life Health Regen, and the thing is like it was of course just like nice to create some atmosphere and the iconic sound, but in multiplayer it was also attracting the attention of your opponents because they knew, oh yeah, cheater, you're trying to get your health back and probably fight back again. So the next one. Exactly, guys. This is the most loved, probably, like example, and most hated by a lot of people, and they were just like even trying to switch it off. So if you ever played, that was basically half of the interface for the Space Marine, the lonely and vulnerable guy crawling through the dark corridors of all these kind of like spaceships, and that was the only means like to tell him like, okay, there are aliens somewhere and they are approaching, and basically a lot of people couldn't stand it, so they were either like trying to stop playing it. The next one. It's a bit more difficult and it's really modern, and it's not me running after coffee on Monday. Please go. Sorry? No? No. But let's actually take a look at this one so you can have a picture attached to that. So here, that's an Overwatch and the footsteps, and they've done an amazing job because it is quite vital if you're playing competitively and professionally, because first of all, beforehand you can understand like who is over there, who is around the corner. Why? Because like all the characters, they have very distinct sounds and they never overlap. And secondly, your opponents actually sound louder than your, for instance, like teammates, which also helps, okay, like to precede the, what's gonna be happening. So that was the last point out of our 15. Of course, this is not all, but at least those are the ones that we really can like think make a difference. And to make a bit more sense out of them, we decided to group them, and there were like a lot of ideas like and perspectives on that. But I think the most logical for us was like to group them by the expertise that like the people that are going to be involved and responsible for these things. And we think those are like basically 3 groups, and you can divide it like usability, so those are UX designers and researchers. Immersion, which is like the game designers and the sound engineers, and aesthetics, like UI artists and visual designers. So with this, we would like to conclude our story and say like that basically every single point over here is very important on its own. But in all of the games that we showed before, even though we used to show like 3 or 4 points per game, they basically use all of them or like the majority of them together, and then they bring the very kind of like interesting and good experience. Because all of the AAA games are actually about tremendous attention to details, and this is what we really kind of like because apparently all of these things separately, and for some people are more important or less important, are bringing them back there every single day and make them enjoy this experience way more. So what we would like to do is like to encourage you guys like to take this list or just like to go play the games, try to deconstruct them yourself, analyze all these points. But what's important to understand, why are they there? What are they actually kind of like improving, or why are they standing in the way? And hopefully it's going to help you and your team to develop some tactics and strategies like on how to improve your game or make it truly AAA. So with this, thank you for your attention, and we're open for the questions. Over there.
Thanks. Good stuff. Good stuff. I have this producer background, so I have this producer angle question to you. I have witnessed many times that the menus, UIs are done too lately in the project. Like you know those tutorials as well. They're the last ones. And the both are super important for onboarding, and when you make them last, pardon my language, but usually they suck, and you are hurry and you are crunching, and if you do them so well as you described, that they are contextual and everything, then if you would start doing them early, that might even affect the game design and gameplay. So my question is, when would you recommend start doing the menus? How would you what would be the optimal process? How you do it actually?
So like if I understood that correct, you were asking about the onboarding process basically?
No, it's when
In the game development, I mean in the game development process, when would you start thinking and doing menus and UI?
So I will give you my opinion because it varies a bit from Konstantin's. So for me, it should be definitely as soon as possible, but I would really love UX designers working with game designers, because for me personally, even level design is your user interface. It gives you feedback where you can go and where you cannot. But in general, if you look, for example, at Hellblade, there is no visible UI, but it is driven, like game design is driven kinda and connected with the user interface. It has to work together. So if you are lacking the HUD, you have to provide feedback in other ways. So for example, showing the blood on people you fight with, or showing the ladder so you know you can climb it, you don't have to press button or something. So starting as soon as possible on the conceptual level to realize how much of the visible user interface we actually need and how much can you provide with the game world itself.
Actually, highly advisable to try Hellblade if you didn't, because I know that you like sound and music, and it's an extremely great work done through the sound, because like you have these voices in your head.
What was the game? Sorry.
Hellblade.
Hellblade.
And you have these voices in your head that are actually guiding you through the experience, but that's a first-person, basically, action game.
Who's next?
All right, hi, thank you. So what do you think, like, is it possible to implement these kind of features into the MMO project? Like, for example, you have the World of Warcraft and or some kind of other games similar to this. And the UI, for example, for the beginners, it's really hard to understand what is and where it is. So is it possible to use this kind of things in a game like that?
That's a perfect question. So basically, we had to limit ourselves to some, consumable amount of features. But one of them at the earlier stage of our actual research was as well the answer, like, what makes a good UI? Because like you're on different stages, and we had this point like show, don't explain. And a lot of games are really good at that, like that they would really create the UI in a way that is easily understandable from the get-go. And the simple examples would be, for instance, like in Horizon, they have a really enormous abilities list, but instead of just explaining to you what's going to be happening, because it's vital to pick up for instance, like the time slowdown at the very beginning and stuff like that. They would show to you a small videos explaining what this ability exactly does. And besides, of course, progressive basically reveal of the UI is a very helpful technique as well. So I guess like in World of Warcraft, you never start with all the modes and everything on the screen already. You have to learn and make your way to it, understanding what you really need and what you don't. And I guess actually World of Warcraft is a great example because they gave the power to the user. They give you the possibility to completely customize your UI in whatever way you want. And of course, that's the power user feature already. I hope it at least touches the...
Yeah, thank you.
Привет, Костя. Спасибо за доклад, очень интересно. У меня такой вопрос.
Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about porting to different platforms. There is PC, there is console, and approach to interface depends whether there will be such porting in the future done or not. For example, you demonstrated Destiny, and it was a console game, and the interface of PC would look differently. So how would you structure your work if you know that it will be multi-platform and you'll need to port it to different platforms? Thank you, Maxim, for your question. This is a good question. There is no simple answer. My answer would be as follows. We face that situation in our work, of course, too. World of Tanks, for example, if we take, we exist in each platform. And besides multi-platform, there are also 20 satellite services like administration, portal support, and so on. Those two should be similar in interface and certain elements of interface too, so that user could recognize them easily and identify them easily. I believe personally in developing a design system that's not just one interface, but it's a whole design system where you lay main principles for the whole system originally, and then you follow them in all the implementations of various interfaces, and then you could also embed scalability and cross-platform approach that the interface would be portable or would not lose anything when you port it, and then we could be in a better position, knowing that we will face that. And if you ask whether there should be a similar approach to each, no. There are certain limitations and certain advantages for each of those platforms, so we should take that into account. So design system is recommended. That means thinking about all that.
I would like to ask you to, well, speak English, because
so
our
like,
English-speaking colleagues won't understand us, and if we switch to Russian.
Thank you. Like me, I have no idea what that was around. So this might be the same question. Have you looked much into differences in culture across age and sex? Things like this, because one user interface might actually change depending on where you are in the world, how old you are, whether you're male or female, whether that impacts any of the things that you've actually said.
Really want to take this one? It's a hard one, yeah.
Yeah, so of course it can change. It doesn't seem like most of the games are actually changing a lot. They have pretty similar approaches, and also if you think about it, so for example, if you are aiming at clarity of your typography, depending on the culture, the rule will be the same. You're aiming for readability and showing the information properly. The exact things you have to do and the solutions may be a little bit different. So yeah, you have to adjust, but from what we have seen, mostly the interfaces seem rather consistent across different platforms. Of course, if you look at Chinese market, a lot of stuff can happen there, and I don't understand their internet, so it is different. I'm not sure it's always possible to adjust to everybody, though.
I want to add over here a bit, because after all, to make a better product, I truly believe that you have to target some specific audience. And targeting like from 0 to 99 is probably not going to make any good to your user interface. This is one thing. So like some segment should be more important than the rest, and then this segment can set the priorities, and the rest will lead. And the second point here is generally in the last kind of like decade, there was a huge trend over like, okay, like let's make all the experiences personalized and customizable on the go. Like for instance, like Spotify figures out like what you like and provides you a better music like next time. But in the recent years, and there are a lot of talks about that there was a backfire actually from this action, because going through a lot of personalization makes at some point undesirable experience, because like you didn't really understood the algorithm or could influence it, and you would always rely on the developer to do so. And sometimes like kind of like having a clear, let's say again like use the Spotify, clear Spotify is probably gonna play better music for you than the one that was learning from your experience like for the last kind of couple of years.
Well, I'm very sorry, but we have time only for the last question. So, well, okay. You're lucky to be.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. A bit technical question. I have seen many crappy UI tools and seen tons of bugs because of these tools. What is your favorite tools in creating UI for AAA games? And don't say scale form.
So, this is actually funny, and again, the Destiny would be a good example. So basically, you have to create your tools if you want to be efficient. And if you start looking into Destiny, they actually had different tools for a lot of different aspects of the UI. So for example, flyouts, they analyze the movement of the cursor. So they look at direction, they look at speed, and they had a visualization of how it looks, and they could adjust it in-game. So they could find the proper values to make it really feel good. And the same was happening with translations. They could do it in-game itself. The same was happening with iconography, and they also could automate it a lot. So basically having a team that is willing to help you and create tools that you can easily test and do it in game. It's super efficient, it speeds up the process, so this is like a perfect scenario. Of course, it's hard to do.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the amazing presentation, which was...
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It was really brilliant in spite even of those technical issues. So guys, if you have some more questions to our speakers, you may find them somewhere on the venue during the day. Thank you.
Hi, we're with one of our speakers who just gave his speech here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alex Shpilov. I'm head of gaming and esports at wiki.com. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you. So tell us, what's your favorite video game?
Well, at this moment, my favorite game is Destiny 2. I have already spent a lot of hours in it, and it's really awesome.
It is, I gotta tell you. But this is a new game. What about the very first video game you've played? Do you remember it?
The first game was the first Quake. I played it with my dad in my childhood.
That's really great childhood memories, I guess. So tell me, how did you get to the gaming industry?
Well, I was user of some fan community about Steam and Valve games, and I began to translate some games from some news articles and so on from English to Russian, and Valve invited me to translate their games as a volunteer, and after this I became such a dedicated employee at Valve, and now I'm here.
And what do you think about 4C?
It's my second 4C. I have already visited 4C in Kiev the last year, and it's really cool. I really love it.
Well, I hope you love this one as well, and I hope you get lots of new knowledge and share the knowledge as well. Did you have any questions from the audience that you really liked?
Yeah, the audience was cool. They asked really cool questions, and I hope my speech was really useful for them.
It definitely was. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, we've got one of our speakers again and wanted to ask him some questions. Hi, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Andrei Sarafanov. I'm a senior 3D artist from Wargaming. I'm working on World of Tanks project and creating 3D models of our tanks.
Fantastic. Andrew, tell me, what's the very first game that you've played? Do you remember it?
Actually, I think it was Tetris. Yes, I was amazed by the quality of the assets. I love to play this game all the time. But later, after I saw what computer games can do, I was I've tried to move to the PC gaming, and now I'm working on huge PC titles, and I love it.
Well, that's easy. Tetris had a fantastic destruction engine for its time.
Yeah.
But was it your favorite game, or which one is your favorite game of all time today?
Actually, today I like to play in our game Tanks, and Tetris was more like I had nothing to play, only Tetris. And today Tanks pretty much solves all my wishes, and all I want I can find in this game. It's kind of simple, pretty fast, not very long session, and I have a lot of time to work on my own projects. So that's why I like to play the World of Tanks.
Great. What led you to the gaming industry? How did you come to this industry, to this job?
Yeah, actually, I saw interesting CG artist challenge in the internet, and I saw cool character art from different artists all over the world, and I was amazed that young guys can create such amazing art. So I decided to try this out, and I found that it's not that hard, and I can learn that stuff. And I did it as in my spare time, just like a side project from my main job. And I was noticed by Wargaming at some point, and they invited me to join their team, and now I'm doing tanks.
That sounds like a great deal. So glad to have you in the industry. What's your favorite thing about it? Just about the game development?
Yeah, I like the diversity of this industry because it changes a lot, and it has a lot of different branches all over the world, different people creating very interesting experience, and every year you need to adapt to the changes and learn new things. And it is very fast-moving industry, and I love it because you need to learn every day.
We definitely all love the industry, but there are maybe some frustrations, something that you don't like that makes you sad in the state of the gaming industry today?
Well, maybe some tools are not developed enough to meet our requirements, so we have to do too much technical work as an artist. But with every year, this issue resolves little by little. So I think it's pretty okay to work these days. So it's not a lot of problems, but a lot of fun.
I agree with you there. It definitely changes quickly. Where do you think the industry will be like in 10 years' time? Do you vision any trends?
As far as I can see, VR industry, it didn't have a good start, but it certainly takes pace. I saw a lot of good examples for artists, like software to paint in virtual reality. It works really well, and I think through the special software, VR will take its place, and at some point, most of game projects will go to VR in the future.
So you think it's going to be the next big thing for everyone, right?
Yes, of course, because it's really immersive experience, and you don't have any boundaries in VR when you use VR headset, and it slowly but surely takes its place, and I think we will be there.
Yeah, the immersion definitely improves with both VR and just the quality of graphics. But do you think the graphics are more important than the storyline, or the gameplay maybe is in the front, or a mixture of some of these?
You need to balance every aspect of your game. As an artist, I know that a lot of details are not that important. The more important the basic structure you want to show to the viewer, and you need to have like basic shapes which will be easy to read, and a narrative is a good example. If you have a good narrative, it can help you to support your characters and all your gameplay mechanics. So I think you need to balance every aspect of your game, and you will get success, achieve success.
Do you have any vision of a game that you'd like to create if you weren't restricted anyhow financially or creatively or professionally, just create anything?
Yeah, and I'm not sure about the genre, but in my spare time I want to create some universes. I'm doing it at the time, and maybe at some point I will make some game project from the assets I've created. So I'm working on it, but I'm not sure what will it be.
Well, whatever it may be, I hope it turns out well for you. But right now we're here in St. Pete. What do you think about the city?
It's my second time in the city, and the weather this time is much better. And I love it because the architecture is amazing. Never saw anything like this before. And I love to visit museums. There is an artillery museum here, and I'm, as a tank artist, love to visit such exhibitions. I saw a lot of cool stuff, and we'll visit this city again in the future, for sure.
It's great that you like it, but as far as I understand, 4C is one of the primary goals of your visit. What do you think about the event?
Yeah, event was. I didn't expect that so much speakers will come in one place, and I'm amazed by the quality of the organization structure so far. So far I love it. It's a very cool conference.
Do you have a favorite question that you were asked before the start of the conference yet?
Favorite question? No, I don't have.
What would you ask yourself then? If you were interviewing yourself, what would you like to open up with? What would you ask yourself?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of hard question for me.
It's fine, but it's kind of a retrospective thing. And any presentation that you're particularly looking forward to? Which one would you like to hear?
I've met a couple interesting people here, and I will attend their presentation for sure. But there are many of them, so I will not pick any one of them.
Well, I hope you get a favorite sometime along the line, and I hope you like the event overall. Thank you very much for your participation.